All right, let's dive into some fascinating ideas today. We're going deep into Marcelo Martorelli's thoughts on spiritual initiation.
Yeah, his lecture, the one you shared,
Yeah.
it's really packed with thought-provoking stuff about consciousness, the ego and connecting with your deeper self.
Yeah, and I like how he starts.
Oh,
He
yeah.
talks about that feeling. I think a lot of us have it sometimes.
Yeah, like you're stuck.
Yeah, like we're stuck in a rut,
Oh, totally.
just kind of living on autopilot.
He calls it
The fact that
that horizontal existence
Yeah,
without that vertical connection with our soul.
exactly. But he doesn't just lay out the problem. He actually gives us a roadmap to move beyond it.
Yeah, he does.
I think that's one of the things that's so appealing about his work.
Definitely.
It definitely resonates with me. I think, we've all had those moments where we feel like we're just going through the motions.
Oh, absolutely. And what's really striking about Martorelli's approach is that he draws these parallels to these ancient wisdom traditions, but he uses this language that feels very relevant to, our modern experience.
Yes, totally. So how does he suggest we begin this journey? From horizontal to vertical, right?
Well, he calls this first stage the path of the primary disciple.
Okay.
And this stage is all about recognizing the ego's dominance in our lives.
Okay.
Like we start to pay attention to those knee-jerk reactions, those habitual thought patterns that, often drive our actions.
So it's about cultivating self-awareness,
Right.
but not just in a general sense. It's specifically about becoming aware of the ego's influence.
Exactly. It's like, holding up a mirror to your thoughts and actions and asking, is this really me?
Yeah.
Or is this my ego running the show?
That is a really powerful question.
Right. And this is where it gets really practical, I think.
Okay, I'm all ears. How does this play out in our everyday lives?
Okay, so imagine you're in a meeting at work and someone criticizes your idea.
Okay, yeah.
Do you immediately get defensive?
Oh, yeah.
Feel that surge of anger or resentment?
Right.
That's the ego reacting.
Totally, yeah.
But if you're practicing this primary disciple awareness,
Right.
you might notice those feelings arise, but without letting them dictate your response.
So it's not about suppressing emotions.
No.
But it's about creating space between the feeling and our reaction to it.
Exactly.
It's almost like that classic advice, take a deep breath,
Yeah.
but with a deeper level of awareness.
Absolutely. And Martorelli, he goes even deeper,
Okay.
explaining how this lack of self-awareness can actually lead us down a path of negativity and suffering.
Wow, that's a pretty strong claim. How does he connect those dots?
Well, he argues that without the observer, that self-aware part of ourselves,
Right.
we become consumed by our thoughts, especially the negative ones.
Oh.
We get caught in this loop of self-criticism,
Yes.
doubt, and anxiety.
Yeah, I know that loop well.
Right. Sound familiar?
Oh, all too familiar.
Right.
But he also suggests that we can transmute this negativity into something positive. How is that even possible? Like when you're in that downward spiral?
Well, he uses this really powerful metaphor,
Okay.
comparing our thoughts to the energy of a light bulb. So the filament is the source of the energy,
Right.
but the light itself is what illuminates the room.
Okay.
He says we need to shift our focus from the light, the fleeting, reactive thoughts,
Right.
to the filament,
Yeah.
which represents the underlying ideas and beliefs shaping those thoughts.
So instead of getting caught up in the surface level negativity, we can ask ourselves, what deeper belief is driving this thought?
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay.
And this leads us to another fascinating concept.
Okay.
He introduces
Okay.
the idea that we actually possess two distinct minds.
Two minds. Okay. Now you've got my attention.
Okay, so he calls them
What's that all about?
the concrete mind
Okay.
and the abstract mind.
Right.
So the concrete mind is our everyday operating system. It deals with the practical matters.
Okay. Yeah.
Memories, facts, the to-do list.
Got it.
But the abstract mind is something much deeper. It's the realm of the soul, where our values, our morals, and our deeper reasoning reside.
So it's almost like we have these two parallel processors running simultaneously, one grounded in the material world and the other connected to something bigger than ourselves.
Exactly. And this concept has some pretty radical implications.
Okay.
For example, Martorelli challenges this conventional view that our mind is limited to our physical brain. He suggests that this abstract mind, this soul mind, could potentially connect us to something far beyond our individual experience.
Okay, that's mind-blowing. It makes you wonder other capabilities we might have that we haven't even tapped into yet.
And here's the catch. Even when we start to understand this concept of two minds and start to cultivate self-awareness, there's another hurdle we often face: duality.
Duality, you mean like good and evil, light and darkness?
Not exactly. Martorelli is referring to the dualistic nature of thought itself.
Okay.
He says we tend to get trapped in a cycle of self-judgment.
Oh.
Swinging back and forth between justifying our actions and then condemning ourselves.
Oh, I know that feeling.
Right.
It's like that internal ping pong match.
Yes.
I'm right, I'm wrong. I should have done this. I should have done that. It's exhausting.
Right. It really is. And he argues that true spiritual growth, that, that vertical connection that he talks about, requires us to transcend this dualistic thinking. We have to move beyond the constant self-judgment and find a more balanced perspective.
So how do we escape that mental tug of war? It sounds like we're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Well, according to Martorelli, this is where the antakarana comes in.
Antakarana.
Yeah, it's a Sanskrit term. And he uses it to describe the bridge we build between our personality and our soul.
A bridge. So we're not just talking about a mental shift. We're talking about something that actually connects these two parts of ourselves.
Precisely. And the key to building this bridge, he says, is consistent self-observation.
Okay.
Not just noticing our thoughts and actions, but also becoming aware of our emotions.
Okay.
And even our speech.
Our speech. How does that fit into the picture?
Well, he's got some really fascinating ideas about the different levels of speech.
Okay.
He suggests that most of us, we operate on this very basic level, what he calls vulgar everyday speech.
Okay.
It's mostly reactive, just getting things off our chest.
Right.
But there's this higher level he calls the word that expresses.
Okay.
Which comes from a deeper place within us.
So it's about being more mindful of what we say and how we say it.
Yes.
Choosing our words carefully, speaking with intention.
That's right. And then there's this highest level he describes, the word that syntonizes.
The word that syntonizes.
Yeah, he says this is the language of the soul, the type of speech that actually has the power to connect us to something, larger than ourselves.
Wow, the word that syntonizes. That sounds powerful.
I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. Self-awareness, understanding duality, mastering our speech. It's like this multi-pronged approach to building that bridge to the soul.
Exactly. And, Martorelli, he also emphasizes the importance of recognizing synchronicities.
Okay.
Those meaningful coincidences.
Oh, yeah.
That often feel like a wink from the universe.
Yes.
He suggests that as we strengthen the antakarana,
yeah,
that bridge to the soul, we become more attuned to these subtle signs and messages.
I've always been fascinated by synchronicities.
Oh, really?
It's like these little nudges from the universe kind of pointing us in the right direction. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just, reading too much into things. It's a great question, and one we should definitely explore further.
Yeah, absolutely. What stands out to you most so far about Martorelli's ideas?
Well, this whole idea of two minds really grabbed my attention.
Yeah.
It's made me think about all the ways we might be limiting ourselves by only focusing on the concrete, everyday mind. What about you?
Yeah, I think what's most interesting is how Martorelli...
how he blends.
Yeah, he blends that ancient wisdom with modern psychology.
Right.
He's offering a framework for spiritual growth that feels both timeless and incredibly relevant to our lives today. And he's challenging us to consider a much broader definition of what the mind is and what it's capable of.
I completely agree.
This is definitely giving me a lot to ponder.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, it's like we're expanding our mental map.
Yeah.
Venturing beyond that familiar territory of the concrete mind and into those uncharted realms of the abstract mind.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It really captures that sense of exploration that comes with this kind of inner work.
Absolutely.
But how do synchronicities play into all of this? I'm curious to hear more about how we can learn to recognize and interpret those meaningful coincidences.
Well, Martorelli, he suggests that these synchronicities, they're like messages from the universe.
Yeah.
These subtle signs that guide us along our path.
Okay.
But to perceive these messages, we need to kind of tune our awareness to a different frequency.
Okay.
It's like trying to listen to, a distant radio station.
Right.
You need to adjust the dial to pick up the signal clearly.
So the clearer our connection to our soul, the better we can interpret these cosmic messages.
Exactly. He believes that a well-developed antikarana, it acts like this finely tuned antenna,
Okay.
allowing us to pick up on those subtle synchronicities that might otherwise go unnoticed.
Can you give us an example of what a synchronicity might look like in everyday life?
Sure, imagine you've been feeling, stuck in a rut,
Yeah.
unsure about a career change.
Okay.
Then, seemingly out of the blue, you run into an old friend who's successfully made a similar transition.
Yeah.
They share their experiences, offer valuable advice, and even connect you with someone in their network. That chance encounter.
Yeah.
That could be a synchronicity, orchestrated by a higher intelligence to guide you toward your true path.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like the universe is conspiring to support us,
Yeah.
but we need to be open and receptive to those opportunities.
Right.
But, this whole idea of building the antikarana,
Yeah.
it still feels a little bit abstract.
Yeah.
What are some practical steps we can take to actually strengthen that bridge to our soul?
Well, remember those 3 keys to awakening consciousness we talked about earlier?
Yes.
Self-observation, understanding duality, and mastering our speech.
Yes.
Martorelli, he dives deeper into each of these, offering specific techniques for cultivating them.
Okay.
He calls them the 3 instruments for building the antikarana.
Okay, let's start with self-observation.
Okay.
We've talked about this a lot already.
Right.
But how do we take it to the next level?
Well, Martorelli emphasizes that true self-observation, it goes beyond just, noticing our thoughts.
Yeah.
It's about developing this detached awareness,
Yeah, okay.
observing those thoughts without judgment or identification.
Okay.
He uses this analogy of a scientist observing a specimen under a microscope. You study the thoughts with curiosity, with objectivity,
Okay.
but you don't get entangled in them.
I think a lot of people might struggle with that detachment.
Yeah.
We're so used to identifying with our thoughts,
Yeah.
believing that they are who we are.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a common obstacle.
Yeah.
He suggests a simple exercise to cultivate this detachment.
Okay.
Imagine your thoughts are clouds passing through the sky of your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
You observe their shapes, their movements,
Okay.
but you don't try to cling to them or push them away.
Right.
You simply allow them to come and go.
That's a beautiful visual.
Yeah.
It makes the process feel more manageable somehow.
He also highlights the importance of observing our emotions and even our physical sensations.
Okay.
He suggests paying attention to how our body reacts in different situations.
Right.
Do we tense up when we're stressed? Do we feel a warmth in our chest when we experience joy?
So we're not just observing our internal dialogue, but also tuning in to the wisdom of our body.
Exactly.
It's like we're gathering data from multiple sources to get a deeper understanding of ourselves.
Exactly. And this brings us to the second key,
Okay.
understanding duality.
Yeah.
We talked about how we tend to get caught in that mental tug of war
Right.
between justification and self-blame.
Yeah.
Martorelli, he offers a technique for breaking free from that cycle.
Okay. I'm eager to hear about this.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us could benefit from learning how to escape that mental trap.
He calls it the technique of the middle point, and it involves acknowledging both sides of the duality,
Okay.
the justification and the self-blame,
Mm-hmm.
without getting pulled into either extreme.
Okay.
We recognize that both perspectives exist within us,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't identify with either one. Instead, we find that middle point, the
Right.
point of balance and neutrality.
It's like finding that still point in the center of a seesaw,
Yes,
where neither side has more weight than the other.
exactly.
But how do we actually do that? It sounds easier said than done.
It takes practice, of course.
Yeah.
But he suggests starting with a simple affirmation.
Okay.
I acknowledge both the part of me that wants to justify my actions and the part of me that wants to blame myself.
Mm-hmm.
I choose to observe these two perspectives without judgment,
Okay.
and I seek the middle point, the point of balance and equanimity.
It's like we're inviting those two warring factions to the negotiating table.
Yeah,
But we're not taking sides.
right.
We're simply acting as the mediator,
Exactly.
seeking a peaceful resolution.
Oh, that's a great analogy. And this brings us to the third key,
Okay.
the one we touched on earlier,
Right.
mastering our speech.
Yes.
Remember those different levels of speech Martorelli describes.
Yes, the vulgar, the expressive, and the one that syntonizes.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about how we can cultivate that highest level of speech, the language of the soul.
Well, he's very clear that it's not about, trying to force ourselves to speak in a certain way
Yeah.
or adopt some kind of spiritual jargon.
Okay.
It's more about becoming aware of the energy and intention behind our words.
So it's not just about what we say, but how we say it, the vibrational quality of our speech.
Exactly. He suggests paying attention to the tone of our voice, the rhythm of our words,
Wow.
the way our body feels when we speak.
Yeah.
Are we speaking from a place of openness and compassion,
All right.
or are we projecting, anger, judgment, or fear?
It's almost like we're becoming sound healers.
Yeah.
Using the power of our voice to shift our own energy and the energy of those around us.
Right. And he even suggests that by cultivating this word that syntonizes, we can tap into a deeper level of creativity and inspiration.
That's fascinating. So it's not just about spiritual growth,
Yeah.
but also about unlocking our creative potential.
Exactly. He believes that when we align our speech with the vibration of our soul, we open ourselves up to this flow of insights and ideas that wouldn't be accessible otherwise.
It's like we're becoming conduits for a higher intelligence, allowing that creative energy to flow through us.
Right.
But how do we actually practice this? Do we need to chant mantras or recite affirmations?
He doesn't prescribe any specific practices, but he emphasizes the importance of listening to the silence within.
Okay.
He says that by quieting the mind, creating space for stillness, we allow the word that syntonizes to emerge organically.
It makes me think of that saying, speak only when your words are more beautiful than silence.
That's a beautiful way to put it. It reminds us that sometimes the most powerful communication happens in the spaces between the words.
So we've explored the 3 instruments for building the Antakarana. Self-observation, understanding duality, and mastering our speech.
Right.
It's a lot to take in.
It is.
But I'm starting to get a sense of how these practices work together
Yeah.
to create a more profound connection with our soul.
Yeah.
But I'm still curious about those synchronicities.
Okay.
How can we learn to recognize them amidst the noise and chaos of everyday life?
Yeah, it feels like we're talking about developing a whole new sense.
Right.
Like a kind of a soul radar,
Yeah.
for picking up on those subtle signals from the universe.
That's a great way to think about it. And like any skill, it takes, practice and attention to develop.
Right.
Martorelli, he points out that we're bombarded with sensory input all day long, sights, sounds, notifications.
Right.
It's easy to miss those quieter, more meaningful messages. So how do we filter out the noise and tune in to the whispers of the universe? Is it like meditation where we cultivate a quiet mind?
Well, meditation is definitely one powerful tool.
Yeah.
But, Martorelli suggests it's more about cultivating a state of mindful awareness throughout the day.
Okay.
It's about paying attention to our intuition, those gut feelings that often guide us towards the right path, even if we don't consciously understand why.
Sometimes I get these strong intuitive hits,
Yeah.
but then I second guess myself.
Oh, yeah.
I start overthinking it, and I end up talking myself out of what my gut was telling me.
That's the ego trying to regain control. Martorelli would say it's important to recognize that the ego, it thrives on certainty and predictability.
Yeah.
It wants to analyze everything, to have all the answers.
Right.
But the soul, it speaks a different language.
Oh.
It's a language of intuition, of feeling, of those unexplainable...
So we need to learn to trust our gut instincts, even if they don't, make logical sense at the time.
Exactly. And the more we cultivate that trust, the more those synchronicities will show up in our lives.
Okay.
They might come in the form of chance encounters,
Yeah.
unexpected opportunities, or even just a sudden realization that shifts our perspective.
I've heard people say that synchronicities increase when you're on the right path.
Oh, yeah.
Is there any truth to that?
Well, Martorelli would definitely agree with that.
Okay.
He suggests that as we align ourselves with our soul's purpose, the universe conspires to support us.
Yeah. Okay.
It's like we're stepping into a flow state where everything seems to fall into place effortlessly.
That's such an inspiring thought.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder, what happens when we ignore those synchronicities? Do we miss out on opportunities? Or worse, do we end up on the wrong path?
Well, he doesn't frame it in terms of right and wrong paths.
Right.
Remember, he encourages us to move beyond that kind of dualistic thinking.
Right, right.
Yeah.
But he does suggest that when we ignore those um, intuitive nudges,
Mm-hmm.
we might experience a sense of stagnation or frustration.
Okay.
It's like we're swimming upstream against the current of the universe instead of allowing ourselves to be carried by the flow.
So it's not about punishment,
No.
but about aligning ourselves with the natural order of things.
Exactly. And he reminds us that this journey of spiritual initiation is an ongoing process. There's no finish line.
Yeah.
There's no point in which we've, suddenly arrived. It's about continually refining our awareness, deepening our connection to our soul, and becoming more attuned to the synchronicities that guide us along the way.
This whole conversation has really made me think about my own experiences with synchronicities.
Yeah.
There have been so many times when I've looked back and realized that what seemed like a random event at the time was actually a pivotal turning point in my life.
And that's the beauty of this perspective.
Yeah. It allows us to see those hidden connections, the intricate web of meaning that weaves through our lives.
Right.
It's like, we're reading a novel and suddenly realizing that all those seemingly insignificant details were actually foreshadowing something much larger.
It makes you wonder how many synchronicities we miss because we're not paying attention.
Right. That's why Martorelli emphasizes the importance of cultivating a beginner's mind,
Right.
that sense of childlike wonder and openness to the unknown. He says it's about approaching life with curiosity,
Right.
expecting the unexpected,
Yeah.
and trusting that the universe is always guiding us towards our highest good.
This has been such a fascinating deep dive.
It has.
I feel like I have a whole new perspective on the power of synchronicities and the importance of listening to those subtle whispers from the universe.
I agree.
It's been a pleasure exploring these ideas with you.
Likewise.
And I encourage you to reflect on your own experiences with synchronicities. What messages might the universe be sending your way? What opportunities are unfolding around you right now that you might be overlooking?
Those are great questions to ponder.
And I think that's the perfect note to end on.
Yeah, I think so too.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and remember to keep your eyes open for those synchronicities.
Yeah.
They might be closer than you think.